Yeah, that really struck me that it's like what moment really kind of shaped you. And I thought, wow, I'm not sure what that is. I really started thinking for myself. I tried to look at everything like when, like you said about problems, right? You're either coming out of a problem, about to go into one, or in one.
Right.
And I always tell myself, well, the most important thing isn't necessarily the problem or the outcome. It's how I'm showing up to the problem. And I thought there's at least something adjacent there with that, what your podcast is trying to sort of highlight, and that experience there. Would you say that? Does that make sense?
think you're right. I think you're definitely right, because it isn't just that moment that defines you, but what is it? How did you approach that moment?
Yeah.
Would you approach it differently? Sometimes there's regrets. Maybe it's like, hey, I would have done something totally different in this moment if I could have. And, and it's usually not one moment that defines you. I'm 48 years old. I'm different than I was at 38. And I'm different than I was at, 28. And certainly different than I was at 18. I'll be different at 58. So these moments are going to define me, over the years. They define you as a father. They define you as a business person. They define you as a friend. So, these moments, there's just, and it's just a buildup of who you are. So you're right. It isn't just the moments that define you. It's how you attack those moments. And I think the way I look at the world today, again, is just different than how I look at 28. And I hope that those younger generation might lean into people like me, maybe people like you, that we've gone before it. And that seasonality, there's just no replacement for time. There's just not. That's not to say, as a young person, if you're listening out there, that you don't have things figured out and you aren't headed in the right direction. But there's just no substitution for time. There's just no substitution.
Yeah, and I think there's one way to look at that and feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to get it right. But there's also like, this idea that you got to get it wrong too, right? So you learn something from that. And that's the other thing that it highlighted for me, is that, there are some moments that maybe I didn't show up in my life. Like, so we were chatting before off camera about how I was in a band for years.
Right.
And you were sharing to you knew some folks who were still in a band for 30 years. And I have those too. And I realize now, I sort of had this strange judgment that it's never going to be big enough. I'll never be, and I committed a lot of years to it and sort of walked away, like washed my hands from it. I know now it wasn't necessarily, I was talented enough. I liked what we did,
sure,
but I sort of gave up, right? I just was like, this is really hard right now. And I didn't do that. And I think one of the things I really learned was I could have gotten to a place where I would, some of my friends, they're still on the road, 200 days a year,
They're dogging, baby.
I know, right? I'll see them out there and I'm like, wow. At first it would kind of hit me hard and I'd be, hard on myself about it. But then I was like, oh, you could have done that too if you'd just, if you just stuck with it when it was really hard. And I think there's something true about that.
Well, there's always, there's moments of, I don't want to say regret, but there's just pivotal moments in your life. When I was 17 years old, I met my wife and she was 15. And that's a pivotal moment for me.
Yeah.
Just supposed to be a girlfriend and a Friday night date. And here it turned into, we're celebrating 25 years of marriage this February. So, but it's a moment in time. And I think we were having a discussion coming back from an event I was at, and she was asking me, cause I was playing soccer. I was graduated high school earlier and I was playing soccer at a college, and I tore my knee out, and I ended up coming back and saying, you know what? I don't want to stay at that school. I'm going to stay at a school closer to home. And we ended up continuing a relationship because I came back and transferred to a school closer to our hometown, and then eventually transferred when she graduated to the University of Georgia, and I finished up there. And she said, what do you think would have happened if you didn't have that, tear your knee and come back and do all that? And I don't know, right? Because, I have regrets because I was playing some of the best ball I was playing in my life. You don't know what could have happened. And but that relationship was important. I had my knee, had surgery, and I thought, I just don't want to be here anymore. So it's a decision that you make, and these decisions stack on your life. And so you can't really go back and change what happened. All you can do is move forward. And you just try to make, it's something I talk to young people all the time, is where you're at when you're in your 21, 22, 23 years old. You just don't know what you don't know. But if you can make one good decision that you feel positive about in your life, make that one decision. And maybe that's getting up in the morning and making your bed. Maybe that's, showing up to class on time. Maybe that's reporting to work and saying, I'm going to go a little extra. I'm going to shake hands and look at people in the eye. Just these little decisions build on and on and on to where before long you're making good decisions that are stacking good decisions and living with less regret.